Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Danvers Cares presentation of the NAN project. I'm David Thompson. I'm the director of Danvers Cares, and thrilled to have both Donna Coxick and Lizzie McClellan here tonight from the NAN project to talk about their Trusted Adult program at Danvers. I just moved your slides. At Danvers Cares, our three main pillars are substance use prevention, mental health, and anti-bullying. And this falls really well right in our mental health pillar. So Donna and Lizzie are going to talk about what, as an adult, you can do to become a trusted adult. And with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you both.
I'd like to start off by saying thank you very much to Danvers Cares for inviting us to share what we think is important information. My name is Donna Coxick. I'm the clinical director of the NAN project. My co-presenter is Lizzie McClellan, who is the associate director of the NAN project. And we will be sharing information today about how to be a trusted adult and some of the responsibilities about that. We're really happy to be part of the mental health campaign here in Danvers. When we offer any of these presentations, we always start with a self-care reminder because we will be talking about mental health presentations that may make some people a little bit squeamish, a little uncomfortable. We want you to take care of yourself. So we always offer 988 as a 24-hour line, great place to call and get comfort and counsel. Our agenda for tonight will introduce you to the work that the NAN project does. We'll talk about the qualities of a trusted adult, and we will help you to recognize and respond when a youth might be in a difficult place. And we'll also give you some resources to have at hand. A little bit about the NAN project. We were created in 2015 in memory of Nan Kavanaugh, who died by suicide in 2012. We are an initiative to increase understanding and acceptance of mental health challenges. It's okay to not be okay. We work in middle schools, high schools, colleges, first responders, libraries, community stakeholders. We really want to share with as many people as we can important information about suicide prevention because we feel it is the responsibility of all of us to be agents of social change in the work of suicide prevention. When we started so many years ago, almost 10 years ago, we were in maybe 5 schools. Now we're in over 75 schools and communities. So we are happy to be here in Danvers and we look forward to continued work in Danvers. And with that, I'll hand it over to Lizzie.
Thank you, Donna. So hi, everyone. I'm Lizzie McClellan. I'm the Assistant Director for the NAN project. And before we get started with the material, if you do have any questions throughout the program tonight, there should be a number on the bottom of your screen wherever you're watching. You can text David and he will let us know what your questions are so we can answer you and be a little interactive in that way. So I'm going to get started by talking about what actually makes a trusted adult. And if we were all together in the room, I would ask for some people to shout this out, but we'll just take some time to think about who was that person that as a kid you knew that you could go to, right? If you got into trouble or if you weren't sure what to do about something, who was that person that you knew you could trust and that you could go to? And as we go through our slides tonight, I'll probably ask you to think about that person. Thinking about some things like, what was it about them that really let you know that you could trust this person? Did they give you certain messages about who they were, who you were, that helped you to know that you could open up to this person if you needed to? That's who we're all trying to be tonight, is that trusted adult for someone. And that is something that we can all be. And luckily, we do have some research from young people themselves about what it is that they're looking for. So there's a study that we're going to refer to that was done in 2013 where this researcher, Christy Muir, looked at and asked, basically interviewed adolescents about who is your trusted adult and what about them makes them a trusted adult. And she found 4 key things. So what she found was it was really important that these adults listened and probably listened a little bit more than we're used to, like really actively listening and taking the time to make sure that these young adults or these young people felt understood and knew that they were being listened to and felt important. Trust was a huge piece. And for a lot of young people, that has to do with not just, I trust that you have my best interest at heart, but also privacy. That was a big concern for a lot of people, that if there was something that I was embarrassed about or concerned about, that I could get guidance without this person telling everybody my business. How advice was given was another key piece that showed up in this research. So young people were talking about, I don't want someone to suddenly jump in and give me advice and tell me exactly how I should do everything. I want them to ask me questions about what I want to do. I want them to give me advice by asking if I want advice. And how that advice was given was also extremely important. So if it felt respectful, it felt non-judgmental, that was what let these young people in Chrissy Muir's study know that this is somebody that I can open up to. And I think the one that stands out the most to me is feeling important. A lot of times kids maybe don't get to feel important, especially from an adult in their life. Getting that message is a big piece that we're going to start. When you get the slides, we can play, I don't think we can play these videos and the people at home can see them, but I think this is a good example. These two videos included, watch them on your own time, about how you really don't have to be a perfect person to be a trusted adult. Making mistakes is a completely fine part of it, and you can actually model that it's okay to make mistakes to a young person who might not know that yet. So these are two examples I will let folks watch on their own time. So one of the biggest pieces that teens and young people talked about looking for in a trusted adult was this listening part. So let's really zoom into that. I'm going to use my younger brother as an example of a time where I was not an excellent listener to him. So he's about 10 years younger than me. And he is very, very similar to me. We are definitely siblings. Our brains work in the same way. We have the same type of problems a lot of the time. And I have not done this first one of avoiding relating back to myself. I am very guilty of, if he tells me that he has a problem and it's something that I've dealt with before, immediately jumping into, I know exactly how to help. Don't worry about it. Here's what you got to do. And about halfway through giving my genius advice that I think is going to fix everything, I will see that he is making a face and that I have not been a good listener. I have related back to myself, and even if I have the perfect answer, that's not what he's looking for. He wanted me to listen. He wanted me to let him say what he needed to say, right? So some ways that you might do that are in validating what they're saying, to kind of rephrase back of, that does sound really hard, or I understand why you're stressed about the situation that you're in. The way that you speak, your tone, your speed, your volume can also help show that you're listening. If you're sitting there with someone in person, leaning in can also show that as well. Any ways that you can show that person that you're interested, you're available, you want to know what they're talking about. I think one really easy way to do this that we might forget is to put away anything that is distracting us. So that could be just turning your body physically to face the person that you're talking to. It could be putting away a phone. It could be turning down the radio when you're driving in the car, but showing them that they're the most important thing to you in that moment. And those are two good ways to be patient and present as well. I like this saying that we have on here, the 80-20 rule. For people who haven't heard of it, the idea is that you want to listen 80% of the time and talk 20% of the time. I've also heard people say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's a good reminder as well. And that is even more important when you have somebody opening up about something that is vulnerable or scary to talk about. We work with a lot of students in the classroom who will talk about, I want to talk to an adult about, these early signs of a mental health challenge that I'm seeing in myself, but I just don't know how to start the conversation. I've been thinking about it and I don't even know how to start. So this is a moment that is so, or can be so vulnerable and scary for them. We need to really go above and beyond. Some phrases that I like to keep in my back pocket when somebody is kind of telling me about how things have been for them is, what was that like? Take your time, I'm listening. If they need some silence, it's okay to just sit there in the silence. Or when I'm kind of at a loss for words, I'm not even sure what to say, but I'm just so glad that you told me and you're not sitting with it by yourself. Boundaries are an important part of this as well. If we have any folks who work with youth or work with young people, I think this is double important for all of them. There's one definition of boundaries that I like. It's maybe not the dictionary definition, but boundaries being the distance at which I can love you and I can love me. So trying to think about what that means in your relationship to a young person, it could be not making promises that you can't keep. So for example, not saying things like, of course, I'm not going to tell anyone that you've been dealing with these mental health challenges. We'll keep it secret just between us. Or, of course, this thing that you're worried about isn't going to happen. You are going to do amazing at the soccer game coming up. You're going to bring home first prize in the science fair. Don't worry about that. Those aren't promises that we can keep. If you are working with youth in a setting where you may need to explain, or you may need to have extra boundaries, explaining them can be really helpful. So for example, one thing that we've heard from teachers a lot is it's not as helpful to explain a boundary by saying something like, that's inappropriate, or that's not what I do, or that's my rule. Instead, showing the youth that you think of them as like competent enough to understand this, giving them a little bit more of where the boundary is coming from. Something like, you know, I've chosen not to add students on social media. It helps me keep my work life separate. It helps me kind of keep some of my privacy. Or for example, if you were helping your own student at home, a boundary that you might explain could be something like, you know, I know that you are afraid of emailing your teacher about the assignment that you did poorly on and didn't expect to do poorly on, but I think it's really important for you to be the one to email. This is a really good time to build a skill. I'll be here, but this is time for you to do it. And again, just bringing back that privacy piece, especially for teenagers who have so many restrictions on the privacy that they're allowed to have. We know that showing that trust can be really helpful for them as well, in showing that you can be somebody that they trust. For folks who work with youth, some of you may be mandated reporters. We really encourage, if you are working with young people, to be really upfront and honest about what that means. So for folks who may not know, a mandated reporter would be someone who absolutely has to report, could be a teacher, could be somebody else in a school setting, that some sort of harm is happening to a child, or that they think some sort of harm is happening to a child. We really encourage folks to be upfront and honest about that, which allows, again, a student to be more upfront and honest with you. This is another great kind of example of acting transparently, showing students, showing young people that you are close to kind of what's going on and why you're doing the things that you're doing can also show that you're able to be trusted. A couple responsibilities and limitations to this being a trusted adult. This is a really difficult thing to do, but it's okay to not have the answer. It's okay to say something like, I actually don't know the answer to that, or I've never dealt with something like this before, but we can figure it out together. And again, that can be a way to show that life skill to a young person who might never have seen that happen in action before, of there's going to be times in your life where you don't necessarily know things. That's okay. We can figure it out together. Donna's going to talk a little bit more about how this plays into mental health challenges in particular, but it's true across the board of working as part of a team. One of our kind of catchphrases at the NAN Project is never worry alone. So if you're seeing something that makes you concerned, if you are noticing something in a young person that you are close to or work with, we really encourage you to identify who else around can be part of that network to help keep that person safe. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Donna to actually get into some of the facts and talk about kind of how these trusted adult pieces fit into being a trusted adult in mental health. Skip this one? Sure thing.
Thanks, Lizzie. So now that you have the basic parameters of being a trusted adult, one of your responsibilities as a trusted adult is to keep your eye on that child. And you're going to be in a position where you will see things, you will hear things, you're going to get some information that we hope you can identify as some warning signs that maybe someone is headed toward maybe needing an intervention. We've taken the word facts and we've broken it up to the F is for feelings, the A is for actions, the C is for changes, the T is for threats, and the S is for situation. We want you to be able to hear and see these and respond. When we talk about feelings, the feelings that a youth will share with you, one of the top feelings now that youth are going through is loneliness. As the Surgeon General has stated, we are in an epidemic of loneliness. The loneliest generation, according to the CDC, is youth between 10 and 24. That's the group we want to get a hold of. If you're hearing a youth say something like, it's always going to be this way, never ever going to change, I'm never going to pass math. Those feelings that they're overwhelmed, they're hopeless, and they're helpless. Those always or never statements. Anything that you hear that leads you to believe that a student or a youth that you see is under the pressure to be perfect, and they're constantly being self-critical. And the pressure to be perfect, sometimes that comes from us as a society, parents, not with that intent, but kids want to do well in school, and the kids put that pressure on themselves. That's a really hard place to be. No one is perfect. At the NAN Project, when we're in schools every day, we say to the kids, it's okay to not be okay. Has anybody ever had a bad day? We all raise our hands. It's okay to have those feelings, but let's identify them and talk about them. As the clinical director of the NAN Project and a crisis clinician, one of the feelings that I hear in evaluations of youth is that they feel trapped. They cannot see a way out. And this is where, in the findings that Lizzie gave you about your capacity to just listen and say, I don't really have the answer to that, but let's think about together how we can move forward. Just listen, because that feeling of trapped, lack of empathy, they're the feelings that you want to pay attention to. And then if you see or hear about any actions that your youth is involved with, isolation is the first one we start with youth, because they travel around like clumps. So if a youth is pulling away from a friend group, that's going to mean something. What does it mean? I don't know, but it starts a conversation. Any youth who has lost interest in what they used to really enjoy, different clubs at schools, listening to a certain kind of music, babysitting club, gymnastics, whatever it is, and now they no longer have that interest, that's significant. That's significant. You want to see if the child has any involvement at all, because no involvement, too much free time is not a good thing. An increase in screen time, so when you think about it, they've lost interest in what they used to enjoy. Now they're not involved in anything, and an increase in screen time is just not the best recipe for a mentally well person. One other thing that you may see is somebody who is irritable and getting into fights with everybody. Well, speaking for myself, I get irritable. Irritability is normal behavior, but I'm not irritable all the time. So if it's an extended period of time, 2 weeks to 3 weeks for a youth, that would be a cause for concern. The changes that you may see in a youth is a marked, significant change. That somebody who's just going along and all of a sudden they're really feeling low. Something significant. Has they had changes in motivation, concentration, energy, sleep, appetite? Have their grades dropped? Have they engaged in more than experimental drug use? Are they spending more time alone? Are they telling you, I'm anxious, I'm worried about a test, I can't study, I can't keep it in my head because I'm so worried? Are they engaging in risk-taking behaviors? And these are actions that youth take where they don't care what the consequence is. They will get into a car when they know the driver has been drinking. They may drive themselves after they've been drinking. They may be driving fast. For younger kids, it's playing in busy intersections near train tracks. It's getting involved in risk-taking behaviors. Those are the changes that you want to see. Again, it's more than a bad day. For youth, it's about 2 weeks that it would last. And then you want to listen for any threats. Any suicidal statement, whether kidding or just said in anger, we take that seriously. We want youth to know we're listening, we care about you, and you have agency. Your words have power. That shows you I'm listening. If there's any posting or texting, talking, writing about a plan, time for an immediate intervention. And youth are doing that. But you may often hear a little bit more indirect language where you won't have me to worry about too much longer. A lot of young people now are saying, I just don't feel okay. I'm just not well. One young male the other day said, I want to be unalive. So we take that very seriously. We want them to know we are listening and we want to help them. There are some situations that would be a red flag that you want to pay attention to. Somebody who's getting in trouble with school, at school, or with the law. Anyone who's had a recent death in their family, in their community, and recent death could be a grandmother, a beloved teacher, or their pet. It's a significant relationship. A recent loss at home, whether that's divorce, loss of a job of one of the parents, or a breakup. And I want to just take a second to talk about a breakup. A breakup in high school could be a relationship of 5 or 6 weeks. A breakup in middle school could be 2 weeks, and they're just texting. And that breakup is just as significant as the older kids. So we never want to diminish anybody's feeling sad about that. Anyone who now has a preoccupation with death, they're reading about it, they're listening to music about it, they're writing poetry about it. Anyone who's had the diagnosis of a terminal or a serious illness in their family. A lot of youth don't understand that if one of their family members was diagnosed with breast cancer, that that's not a death sentence, that there's help out there. And to have the conversation where, tell me what you know, and then to try and put in some words of comfort there. And just a situation where someone is struggling at home, struggling at school, struggling in the community, in all of their domains that they are struggling. And when you have a relationship with a youth, you get to know them, you can pretty much use your powers of observation and your listening to know that this is somebody's got something going on. Doesn't matter what is going on, we know something's going on. It gives you the capacity to start a conversation, and that's our hope for trusted adults. Start that conversation. Lizzie gave you some good language. What's going on? Kid will say nothing. We can follow up with that. Well, you seem a little down lately. Anything going on at school? How are things with your Spanish teacher? How are things with your friend Mary? To start that conversation and then just listen. The validation of listening is so, so important. We know that youth who are diagnosed with depression think they're invisible. By just listening and giving them that platform, you're saying you're not invisible to me. I want to hear it and I want to help you. Very, very powerful to our youth. You want to know what the resources are, and we're going to give you a couple, local and national. And you also want to activate your own support system. You don't want to be alone in this. As Lizzie spoke about earlier, this is a wraparound effect. You want to know who you're going to bring information to. Who do you talk to and say, I just heard a really tough story from, my son's friend. And talk to that person, because there are responsibilities and boundaries that you want to keep as being that trusted adult. Just a couple of tips. Use your powers of observation. I know some of us in the audience are parents. I could pretty much tell when my kids were walking up the driveway who had a bad day, who failed a test, and who had a good day at school, just by watching them, listening to them. Allow that person to talk. What did you do at school today? Nothing? That's not a conversation. Tell me one good thing that happened at school today. Tell me one thing that you wish you could rewind that happened at school today. Acknowledge and validate. It's not a perfect world. We're all going to make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes. Let's sit down and talk about it. And when I say talk about it, I, as that trusted adult, I am not going to say, well, when I was your age, most dreaded language to any youth. They don't care. They just don't care. Lizzie and I often have this conversation when you're talking to a youth that you have to have a pretty good poker face, that you want to stay calm, you want to stay present, you want to be in the conversation. Don't be like, oh, not helpful. You, as a trusted adult, are in a position to notice changes. Think about that acronym FACTS, and when you see the changes, you want to bring those changes to someone so that that youth can get help. Earlier this afternoon, I was speaking with someone. As a crisis clinician, when youth come in a mental health crisis, I often think as I start the evaluation, I wish there was someone who had noticed this when it was starting, before it got to this level. Now it's a crisis for the youth, it's a crisis for the family, probably a crisis for the school, that we as a community have a responsibility to care for each other. And this is an easy way to join us in our fight to end suicide, because that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. That one. So some useful hotlines. The National Suicide Prevention Crisis Line, 988, cannot suggest it enough. It's 24/7. It has different languages. It has a veterans line. It has a first responder line. They are there for comfort and counsel. We have a couple different lines too. Samaritans, same thing, call or text. Many youth would prefer to text. There is a line called Hey Sam that I think is on the next slide that is all text, and it's actually answered by youth. So it's a young person talking to a young person. We also have some demographic specific. We have the Trevor Project Lifeline, the Trans Lifeline. Trevor Project Lifeline is for LGBTQ plus folks. The Asian Life Net Hotline, and the Steve Fund Crisis Line for people of color. And another one that we wanted to bring your attention to, there have been some changes recently in the way crisis services are delivered. And it's confusing to the community and to the providers. So just to give a little information about it, there is a great line called the Behavioral Health Helpline, which is 24/7, 365 days a year. You can call that number and say, I live in Danvers, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm looking for a female therapist for my 14-year-old daughter who seems very anxious. That's a line out of the Commonwealth that will give you 5 names of providers that are female, that work with females, work with anxiety. They will help you narrow down your search. It's a great place to start. If you don't know where to start, this Behavioral Health Helpline is a great place to start. And here in Danvers, you also have the Community Behavioral Health Center, CBHC. This is Elliott Community Human Services. It's a one-door entrance to all mental health services. It's located on Sylvan Street, and we have the number up there. You can go in, ask for an evaluation. They will do an assessment. They will say, it looks like you could do some time in some groups. They will say, I think we're going to try to find you an outside therapist. I think you can come to a partial hospitalization. They'll find whatever they can to possibly help you. So just really a tip of the cap to the BCHC right here in Danvers. And that's the number that you can contact them. And with that, I think that's pretty much our spiel. Any questions or concerns or anything that you would like more information about? Okay. Hand it back to you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Donna and Lizzie, thank you so much for being here. I know it's hard when you're, talking to a remote audience. So for those that are tuned in, we will have the slides that Donna and Lizzie put up today up on the Danvers Cares website, which is danverscares.org. And if you have any suggestions on future programming that you'd like Danvers Cares to offer for the community, again, surrounding mental health, substance use prevention or anti-bullying, please feel free to email me, which is davidthomson@danvers.org, and Thompson is without a P. So David, THOMSON, @danvers.org. And thank you again both for being here.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.
Good night.